What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me again. Today I have a video where I'm continuing my story about how I grew my net worth. So I made a video previously about how I saved my first $1,000. Today I'm going to talk about taking it to the next level and where I was at in life when I saved my first $10,000. I'll share a link to that other video in a second, but the thing that I'm trying to get across today is that what you have to do to save your first $1,000 is different than what you have to do to make your first $10,000. You're at different points in life, so what you have to do is actually different. In the other video, I talked about how you can cut down a little bit on your daily coffees, daily pleasures to be able to save $1,000. Well, not having your $5 Starbucks every week or every day is not going to save you $10,000. You have to do something different here. So I also mentioned a very simple formula that was just income has to be greater than expenses in order to save money. It seems very simple, but what does that look like when you're trying to save $10,000 now? Your expenses need to stay small and, well, your income has to be a lot larger. So I'm going to start talking about where I was in life, which is around university age and actually just during internship in college university, which is when I hit this milestone. So I'm going to break it down into different categories. I'll talk about the income side of things first, and then I'm going to get to the expenses in a lot more detail. So we'll talk about, food, transportation, that kind of thing. What did I do? Did I invest? What did I do for credit cards? That kind of stuff. So here we go. Okay. So very quickly, the name of the game at this stage in my life was to increase my income. I was in university college at the time in order to get a degree that can help me earn some more money than what I was previously doing part-time jobs. At the time, in university in the summers, I was really trying to save a lot of money. Instead of having one job, I'd have 3 part-time jobs. One was running cables with my dad at his company because he's an electrician. I also used to deliver pizzas for my neighbor who owned a pizza place. And then my least favorite job was working at a coffee shop. The reason I had the coffee shop job was because that was also owned by my neighbor. I wanted to work there even though I was making minimum wage in order to get the pizza delivery job. The pizza delivery job was my favorite job. It was awesome, like just driving around in the summer with your tunes up, windows down, driving around the neighborhood delivering pizzas to other people. So that was those were my side hustles, essentially trying to make some extra cash. But I remember at the coffee shop, I think I was making something like $5 an hour. And I remember at the coffee shop on my last day where I was like, I don't have to clean the toilets anymore. This is the last time I'll ever have to pour a cup of coffee for somebody. And that was because that was my last day. And the next time I was off, I would be doing a paid internship, hopefully doing a paid internship. I don't know if you can hear that. That's the laundry. Laundry's done. Can't do anything around here without something beeping. So the next summer was the summer of 2006. I was lucky enough to land that paid internship, and that greatly increased my income. So that was a big help for me. I worked at a local utility company, and I later would go back to school for my last year and finish and start my career at that same company. But I'll get into that a little bit more because that's more a few years down the line where we'll talk about maybe making your first $100,000. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about investing. We didn't really get into investing in the last video. Saving your first $1,000, I'm not gonna say is not a large amount of money to invest. It's definitely a great time to get in the habit of putting some money aside to invest. However, at $10,000 now, we're talking about how you can take a little bit of your income after you've spent your expenses and start to regularly contribute. So the truth is, at this point in my life, I didn't actually start investing yet. I was on internship, just maybe crossed the 10K net worth here, and I was still very much in savings mode. So this is an area where I would probably do something different. I would probably try to put away a couple $100s a month during my internship on a regular basis, put it in the stock market or put it in some sort of investment account, and be able to grow that money, because the more time you spend in the market, the more successful you'll be in growing that money. I didn't start doing any sort of investing probably for a couple years after this, and that is one thing I probably would have changed. A couple more years in the market could have made a little bit more money for me now. So that is a lesson that I hope you guys take away from this for sure. One important thing to note too about investing is back in the day when I was doing it, I didn't have access to services like Questrade or M1 Finance or Robinhood. Those didn't exist. By the way, if you guys are interested in investing and you're Canadian and you want to open a Questrade account, I've got a link below that'll get you 50 free bucks. These fintech companies did not exist at the time. Your options were essentially to go to a bank and trust them to put you in some sort of mutual fund. That's what most people typically did. Now the opportunity is out there, and you have YouTube channels like mine and others that will explain how investing works and give you opinions about certain types of investments. So all the knowledge is out there for you to absorb, and you can actually invest quite intelligently now versus before when all of that was kind of very mysterious and it was hard to get into. So the opportunity now for 20-something-year-olds to get into the market, it's so accessible through apps and websites. It's a very different world that I lived in just 14 years ago. So the opportunity is definitely there for everyone to take right now, and it'd be great to take advantage of it. The other thing I didn't do when I was that age is hit that like button and subscribe to this channel if you guys are finding value in it so far, or you want to hear more of the story, and I'll be explaining it more on this channel later. Okay, so let's talk about one of the big expenses and what it looks like now that you're at 10K, and that's food. So at the time, I was still in full-on student mode. I could eat off of like $20 a week, and I was able to keep my expenses down for the first while my income got a huge upgrade. So I was able to save a lot of money very quickly at the start of my internship. So that was really good. However, by the end of my 16-month internship, I slowly started getting into this habit of going out and eating a lot of food at restaurants and bars and stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think if you're a social person especially, you can fall into this little bit of a trap where people will just invite you out for so-and-so's birthday, or, hey, we're going out to a patio and we're doing this, so come out. And I slowly found that I was, instead of spending $20 a week on food, I was $200 a week on food, and that's just me. It doesn't take much for you to get to spending $800, $900 a month on eating out, especially when the money is coming in and you're not too worried about it. So this was a really big lesson I learned very early. I learned it the hard way, in that eating out is actually one of your biggest expenses. Food, we will always have to have food, but there are definitely ways to save in this category. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about shelter. So my living situation when I was at $10,000 didn't change much from when I was at $1,000. I still was lucky enough to stay at home. I was on internship, so I'd be going back to school anyway. I didn't see it as a reason to move out, although I did know people who saved up some money on their internship to float them through the last year of university as well. I wouldn't recommend doing that if you can avoid it. You guys already kind of know my opinion on what to do when you are trying to keep your living expenses down. So what I did was I stayed at home, I finished school, and I actually stayed at home for another year after that. That is a huge way to save even more money when you are getting your first career type job and making a substantial amount more than minimum wage. This is a great way to keep your expenses down. Now, I understand that not everybody has that option, and of course, if your situation at home isn't ideal, your health and safety is always more important than saving money, so definitely look into that. But if you do move out, make sure you get a couple roommates, maybe rent a house together, so that you can keep your rent low and keep your expenses down, especially at the beginning. Another option here, especially if you're in university or college, is looking into internships that are abroad. So my school used to offer an internship in Switzerland for 16 months, and sometimes for shorter, for 8 or 10 months as well. And those would be kind of awesome because they may not have paid you as much, but they would take care of your living expenses and give you a food allowance, and you could go, you could experience a different culture, and you could live abroad for a while and get that experience, which is really priceless in itself, and still be able to come back and save a little bit of money. So that was a really good option too, and a way that you could kind of move out temporarily, get that experience, but not have to pay anything for it. All right, so let's talk about transportation now very quickly. My car situation changed from when I was 16 to now when I was about 21 and at $10,000. My car was a 98 Civic hatchback that I actually used a lot of my part-time money to pay for, and that got me to and from university basically for my entire degree. And shout out to Honda for making the Honda Civic and helping us students out. Trevor, if you're watching, I know that you also have a Honda Civic, and isn't it just like the quintessential student car? All I really had to do on that thing was make oil changes. However, it did very quickly show me how expensive cars can be. Not about just like, paying for gas and insurance and stuff, but I had to later go sell that car. I realized that it did depreciate. Even though I bought it used, it did depreciate thousands of dollars over my university career. But the other thing too is that I would get into situations maybe sometimes where I had to fix a dent or replace a body panel, and on a Civic it's actually pretty cheap, but at the time having to spend $500, $600, $700 to replace a bumper or something is a lot of money as a student. So I very quickly realized I have to respect the car and understand that I am not going to be in the next Fast and Furious movie with my souped up Civic. I respected that it's really just an expense and I should try to keep it as low and as cheap as possible. Now, one more thing I would say here, especially in 2020 with things and side hustles that you can do like DoorDash and Uber and Lyft, cars can actually kind of be considered an asset because it can get you that little bit of side hustle pocket money. And otherwise, I wouldn't ever consider a car an asset. It's definitely something that's a liability, but if you use it for work or driving as your job, then yeah, maybe there's a bit of an exception to be made there. And I know those side hustle type of services are helping a lot of students out these days, so that's great. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about credit. So we didn't talk about this in the previous video because this is where it starts to sort of surface, is around sort of university, college age. This was the first time I saw a school let MasterCard or Visa set up booths and try to sell students on credit cards. I ended up getting a MasterCard when I was in university. However, I wasn't always working. They gave me a $3,000 limit on a low interest credit card, and that's what they usually advertise to students, is something with like 10 or 11% interest. I called the company. I tried to get them to reduce my limit down to $500 because my intent was basically to use the card instead of cash. And I didn't want to get into a trap where I was overspending on my card and have it run away on me. Now, MasterCard didn't let me do that. I got it down to a $1,000 limit, and I used that as my fun money. And but I really had to keep an eye on it. It's really easy to forget when you're using a credit card that you may not have the money to pay for it. But it's a really good time to get into a good habit of being disciplined with your credit card and paying it off every month, which is thankfully what I did. The last thing you want to do when you graduate is have not just your student loans to worry about, but then a consumer debt right off the bat that is at a high interest. So this is a little bit of a trap that I kind of warn students about. I realize now like cash isn't as popular, but definitely watch your credit card and make sure you're really disciplined with it, because if you get into the good habits now, later you will get other cards, hopefully some rewards cards, and if you can still be disciplined with them, you're just going to be collecting free prizes, money, gift cards, whatever your card offers. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to talk about here is just entertainment. And guys, I think it's really important, especially in your early 20s, to be able to have fun. Blow off steam. You're working hard, so you may as well play hard, right? Go on those trips with your friends, like go backpacking, travel. This is your opportunity before you start working and you start having responsibilities. When you do so let's talk about traveling, for example, go with a group, backpack, stay in hostels, do whatever you can to make it cheap. You can still get a great experience, have great memories, and those are really important to have. I know that I talk a lot about saving money, but I do want to emphasize that experiences are very important as well. So you should just be responsible, save a little bit on the side, and then you can feel free to go and blow off the rest. That's essentially budgeting to take care of yourself, pay yourself first, and then whatever's left over, you can spend freely without being stressed out about it. This is also a great time to see if you can do classes abroad or a semester abroad, see if the school can kind of fund a trip a little bit. And another big thing would be to make those connections with others, even outside your study group or your classes, like network with people in university, because you never know what friends you'll make and who will be sort of maybe a business partner or a friend or an advisor or a mentor down the line for you. So it's a very crucial time to definitely not just worry about your finances. I would say budget, understand your finances early, do a little bit of investing, but make sure you're out there and getting your experiences as well. That will set you up very nicely. You wouldn't know it, but it would set you up very nicely for the rest of your 20s. So if I were to summarize the video, I would say to make your first 10,000 bucks is all about avoidance. Avoiding the traps of like credit cards, avoiding spending too much on cars, too much on your living expenses and moving out too early. Avoid developing the bad habits and instead focus on the good habits that are going to make you successful for the next decade. Watch how much you spend on your eating out and your entertainment, but of course make sure you balance that out with having some fun, because like I said, this is the time to make all those friendships and all those memories. All right, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I don't want to make it too long, but hopefully you've got something out of it. Hopefully you've learned a little bit of my story, and hopefully some of my experiences helped you guys out. I will get started on working on a video about how to increase your net worth to 100K and how I did that. Until next time, of course, have a great week, spread the wealth, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.